So we're at Woburn Deer Park today. Just about to set off on a bit of a cross-country exploration with the Trek Marlin, or probably should say the Trek Marlin Plus. I've got the RockShox fork on this and the Avid brakes and a bunch of other things. It's been kind of wet, so I'm gonna probably encounter a bit of mud today. And I've got the original tyres put back on this, so those are not entirely ideal for mud, so we'll see how we get on. You don't have to be an adrenaline junkie to ride a mountain bike. You just need a love of the outdoors and a basic level of fitness. The kind of terrain available will depend on where you live, of course, and it's handy to get hold of the Ordnance Survey maps for your local area and plan your ride with reference to those. On the Explorer maps you can ride anything marked in green with long dashes. On the Land Ranger maps it's the same, but they're marked in pink. You can also ride the roads, of course. I usually find myself a route that connects up a number of off-road sections with back roads to complete a loop. Of course the map will help you plan where you're going, but it won't really tell you what conditions are like on the ground, and it's always fun to ride a new route because you're never quite sure what you're going to find.
Oh, this is going to be nasty. I knew it was going to be wet. This is kind of ridiculous. The important thing is not to put a foot down. Whew. This is going to be impossible.
There's always an air of exploration when you're riding cross-country, and that's one of the things I like about it. And so that's what we're doing today. I'm riding a familiar route from Woburn in Bedfordshire, and I'm going to depart from that and add on a new loop that I've never ridden before.
Oh, that's
This is generally mostly a road oriented route, but today we're adding in some new off-road sections, and then the plan is eventually to join back up with the road loop to bring us back to Woburn.
Just got no traction. This is what happens when it's too muddy. You just pick up mud on the tyre and everything grinds to a halt.
So I'm riding the Trek Marlin, which is just the right kind of bike for this kind of riding. This is a 2013 model, and the Marlin lineup has diversified a bit since then, but it's still essentially a cross-country bike. There are, I think, 3 different models in the 2016 Marlin lineup, but the Marlin 7 is closest in spec to this one. It has a modest fork travel, 100mm, but that's more than adequate because we're not going to be doing anything technical or extreme. Now I have a RockShox air fork on this, which is better than the original Sun Tour, but it's still a 100mm fork.
Still very little traction. I can feel the wheels spinning there. Well, this is tough going. I think the conditions are really against us today, and I think I'm being defeated by this mud. Certainly trying to cycle uphill on this is, especially on these tyres, pretty much impossible. But we'll keep going. We've had a few nice tracky bits as well, so maybe we'll get more of that. Now the idea is we're going straight ahead up that hill, but it's going to be very boggy, I would think. Well, it's certainly sandy, but it's not wet. So we might be okay on this. Spoke too soon. That was damned muddy. We got an option here. This is the extended route today, so we're going to go right. This isn't so bad. Still carrying a lot of mud on the bike though, and the shoes. And we got a track up ahead. That's more like it. We're about to go over the motorway. That's the M1. I'm pedalling, I'm not moving. I'm going to have to get off and push. That's what it does to your tyres. Just looking at the GPS, we've got a fair bit more off-road to do, but I think the problem is we're going to be running out of light. We've only got about 2 hours daylight left, and at the rate we're going here, that's not going to be enough. So we might have to short circuit the route a little bit. But we'll see how we go. Might pick up yet. This ain't so bad. I thought that was someone flying a kite, but it's obviously a bird scarer. That's quite good. I like that. This is more like it.
The Marlin's a 29er and the gearing's high enough to give us a good top speed on the roads and firmer trails. Now I've got the original tyres on here, which are strictly dry weather tyres, at least off-road, but again they're really fast rolling and they're a good compromise when it's not too muddy.
And when we get to the bottom of here, it looks like I think it's an RUPP. So I don't know what that's going to look like on the ground. It might be a chalk track, might be a sandy track just like this. Hopefully it's going to be navigable. Byway. There you go, that looks alright. Yeah, it had half a mind to turn back at all that mud earlier. If we'd done that, I would have missed all this, so it's always a good thing to keep going, you know, stick to the plan. You never know what's around the next corner. And it's downhill, which is a bonus. Although weathers are down, there's going to be enough. We're going to pay for it eventually. There's some pretty big potholes here as well.
Of course, riding this kind of route varies a lot according to conditions and season, but you shouldn't think of cross-country riding as a summer-only activity. There's good riding to be had year-round, and some of the best days are to be had in the winter months, particularly on really cold days when the hard ground can compensate for muddy conditions. Now that said, some bridleways can become almost impassable after prolonged wet conditions, so you do have to pick your routes to suit. And today's the 29th of December, and I think you'll see as we go that although it's a beautiful day, the conditions are quite variable. So coming back to the bike for a moment, I just wanted to say something about the gears. We've got a 3x9 setup on the Marlin, and how much of this range you use is going to depend a lot on your approach to the ride. Personally, I just get off and push if I'm faced with too much of a hill. This isn't supposed to be an ordeal after all, but there's enough spread to make all but the most precipitous climbs practical.
Of course, everything's very sandy around here. Don't forget we're up near Woburn. This is the Green Sand Ridge. It ain't green, but it's sand.
Sometimes staying in the saddle is the only practical way to traverse a particularly boggy section that would be virtually impassable on foot. And having quick trigger fingers on the gear levers can mean the difference between powering through or getting stuck. Incidentally, this is also where the Marlin's standover clearance becomes a little bit unwieldy. This is a tall frame design, and it can make your eyes water, shall we say, if you have to put a foot down quickly.
This is actually a pretty good route. I think what we might have been better off doing is doing it the other direction. This sandy bit would be much better going down, because it's quite curvy and swoopy, and lots of dips and bumps and things. And then that uphill will be much more gentle on that fairly hard packed track that we just came down. So maybe that's one for next time. Opposite direction. It's worth an experiment anyway.
One of the things I like about cross-country riding like this is the variation of terrain, and that includes roads. I actually like riding on the tiny little back roads, and actually you're going to find a bridleway will often follow a farm track or even an old decommissioned road for part of its length. There's something inviting and a little bit mysterious about a track that heads off into open countryside. When you start to ride bridleways, you discover a whole network of hidden ways that intersect with the main road system, but which you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for them. Often you'll just find a little overgrown gap on the side of a roundabout, say, or at the foot of a bridge, but then it turns out to be a doorway to a whole new route. Now I should take time to mention the Marlin's brakes. Although we aren't going to be doing any aggressive downhills on this kind of route, the brakes aren't inconsequential. Even on this ride we have plenty of faster bits and some descents, and it's good to have confidence in the brakes. This bike's original brakes were Tektro cable operated disc brakes, and they were basically useless. I've replaced them with Avid BB7s, which are still cable operated, but they're worlds apart from the Tektros. The newer Marlins have hydraulic brakes, which I would guess are better, but I'd recommend the BB7s if you feel the need to swap your brakes. These are much easier to maintain than hydraulic brakes, and to my mind they've got excellent feel and stopping power if your riding doesn't get too extreme.
So I think we're coming up to the motorway pretty much again. We've got to go, well, not quite, we've got to go under the railway again before that. Once we cross the motorway, notionally we join onto my usual Woburn route, which is a loop that takes me round through where Ridgemont Station and Aspley Guys. Now given the light, we're going to lose the light I think before I get back on that route. So I think I might end up retracing a bit of the earlier route, just maybe on the roads. We just have to see. I mean, nominally we've got another hour of daylight, but it doesn't look like that to me. So let's see. So we're back in the deer park, and it's not quite dark.
So that's just a little bit about riding cross country and a nice ride on the Trek Marlin by way of illustration. Of course there's no reason why you can't ride this sort of thing on an expensive mountain bike, except perhaps you might have the disadvantage of lower gearing. But the Marlin's designed for this, and it's a very competent bike in an affordable package. Okay, I've done some upgrades to this one, but it's likely that the hydraulic brakes on the current Marlin 7 and I think the Marlin 6 will be adequate, so all you really need to add is a couple of mudguards and you're all set. The Marlin's available in a whole range of different frame sizes, and the smaller frames have 27.5 inch wheels instead of 29. You can go for the Marlin 5 or 6, but you need to be aware they have cheaper wheels and a few other differences as well, so you might want to think about that depending on what kind of terrain you're going to be riding. So there you go, Trek Marlin 2013 or bringing it up to date, the Trek Marlin 7 for riding cross country. Certainly gets my vote.